TCI is brought to you by TaylorMade Stallion Unbridled Song, producing top songs year after year, including 13 Grade 1 winners. Visit unbridledsong.com.
Welcome back to TCI's On the Clock, where we discuss key issues and races leading into the Breeders' Cup. Alongside Joel Cunningham and Ed DeRosa, I'm John Siegel. Guys, we have a lot to talk about this weekend, but before we do, let's recap last weekend for a minute. No need to talk about acclimation. No surprise there. We thought he would get it done. Let's talk questing for a second in the CCA Oaks, a filly neither of you picked. But my question is, where does she rank now going forward into the Breeders' Cup? Can she take on the older mares?
Well, in fairness, I did pick the only horse who was ahead of her at any point in the race. So.
That's very true. Short-lived.
Yes, small victory.
Just because
she
had blinkers on.
Yeah, that was Joel Rosario. But I do think she's absolutely among the front of the division now. There's no multiple Grade 1 winners, so the fact that she has one of them, to me, speaks volumes. I think the Alabama is going to be a huge race, and then from there, it's who can beat older horses, or at least be competitive. Royal Delta and It's Tricky are going to be tough to overcome, but certainly this is still a wide open division.
Yeah, I think she's pretty good, John. I mean, she's already run that big buyer speed figure, but that was around one turn, and they weren't really expecting it. You know, you talked to Kieran McLaughlin. He wasn't even, the dirt was basically an experiment. They didn't know how she'd run on it. She ran dynamite on it. They stretched her around 2 turns, going a mile and 1/8. I loved how she broke from the rail, was able to settle behind Yar, running off, make the lead and draw off. She did bear out in the stretch, but an impressive performance.
Absolutely.
And I do think she's one of the top 3 real fillies going forward.
All right, the race of last weekend was a Delaware Handicap. Let's go right to the Twin Spires TV race replay. JC, you pick us up at the top of the stretch and bring us on home.
Well, you see Royal Delta here. Mike Smith, I think maybe moved a little early, and he's asking right here, John. You see this big Tis Now mare, Tis Miss Sue. Say what you want about her back class, but the fact that she loves Delaware, she's by Tis Now. You look at her here, she's a big filly, John. She moves alongside, clearly like that 10 furlong distance. I thought she was going to go by right here, but Champ digs down late and gets the job done here. I thought it'd be more comfortable than it was, but she gets the job done.
Well, like you said, she's a champ, showed a lot of grit, but here's my question. She looks vulnerable to me. They had big aspirations for this filly. They were talking about running in the Classic. Do you still think they're thinking that way?
You know, I think that they are, because they paid $8.5 million for her, but realistically, John, we saw what she did at 1.25 miles at Saratoga last year. And I think, when you look at her pedigree and her running style, you figured she would excel against fillies and mares at 4 now going that distance, and she really didn't. I was surprised at how sharp she was early coming in off a bullet work. She was too sharp early, and I think that affected her finish.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Classic at this point has to be viewed as ambitious.
How's she going to beat boys?
Yeah, exactly. Especially this group. It's not like last year. So to me, people are talking about Horse of the Year, and that's way over the top at this point. I need to be talking about older female championship. She still needs to be. It's tricky. It's really only 1-1 against Awesome Maria, who does seem to have tailed off. But I need to see her do more against her own division before we start talking about the Classic.
I agree.
All right, guys, last weekend didn't do too good with the fillies. Let's see how you do with colts. We have 3 major races I want to talk about. Let's start on the West Coast. We have the Ben Crosby. Real quick, you see Amazombi in here. He's number 1 in our TCI top 5 for the sprint division. Does he get it done this weekend, Ed?
Yes.
He's a defending champ, yes. The disappointment, the real story in this race, no Roman threat.
Yeah.
He hadn't worked in a month. That's the disappointing thing. He was number 2 on our top 5.
It could have been a showdown, but instead, probably
Agreed.
have a
Factor
coronation.
backing up to 6 furlongs. I mean, I can't go for him at 6 furlongs. He's just not the same horse.
All right.
Excellent pick.
All right, nice, concise answers there. Let's go now to the East Coast and out to Saratoga, where we see the Jim Dandy. Guys, my question here, gemologist chooses to go to the Haskell. Where is the speed in the Jim Dandy?
It's probably my Adonis. I expect a similar trip to Yara, probably with similar results, unfortunately, for my pick last week. But I just don't see the front end if it's him being able to hold on here. The horses I do like are Liaison coming out west for Bob Baffert. I think Martin Garcia getting up is a huge vote of confidence. And I think Adigun has some upside, too, for Kenny McPeak.
But all those horses have been sort of second-tier 3-year-olds at this point.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't see any standout in this race, so I'm looking for a horse with upside. I really like the way Neck and Neck came around the spring at Churchill earlier this summer. I really think he's shown more sharpness early, but you're right. There's no speed in this race, none.
Right.
And speed held opening weekend at Saratoga. So what's going to really happen here? I agree, my Adonis gets the lead.
All right, you said that these horses were kind of second-tier horses. Let's talk about the Haskell, where we see the opposite. We see a lot of good horses in here. There's 2 Grade 1 winners in here, Gemologist now and also Dullahan, but they will not be the favorite. Do you like the move Winstar did going into the Haskell?
I think you have to like the move. I mean, clearly, you mentioned he's the only Grade 1 winner on dirt in the race. The only time he stubbed his toe, he's 8-1 in the Derby, bruised a foot. Literally stubbed his toe. So he's working sharp. That 58 work, you know, it looked like he worked with Dominus, a good older horse, in the Pletcher Barn. It looks like he's on top of his game. And you don't have Union Rags, you don't have Hansen now, you don't have Bodemeister. That's 3 Grade 1 winners not running now, so it's an opportunity.
All right, Ed, here's a question for you. You got Baffert coming over from the West Coast. He's already won 5 Haskells. Does he win his 6th on Sunday?
I certainly think he's the most likely winner on Sunday with Painter. I'm going to take a look at Dullahan and Nonios. Dullahan burned me pretty good in the Belmont, but dynamics might be a little more in his favor this time. And we talked about upside horses in the Jim Dandy. Well, for me, that horse in the Haskell is Nonios coming for Jerry Hollendorfer. I think he's a good horse, but absolutely Painter's the most likely winner. Any repeat of the Belmont or even that allowance wins this.
I agree on Nonios, but how are they going to get the pace? How's
Yeah.
Dullahan at Monmouth Park
tough.
closing there?
Yeah.
To me, you need tactical speed, not only quality, but tactical speed. I really think this is a tactical race between Painter and Gemologist.
Well, Bejarano helps on Painter then.
I agree, and it's really going to depend on who gets position on the other. I really feel that way. I think you're going to see maybe Doug O'Neill's horse, fresh, coming in, hasn't raced till March, maybe getting that lead early. I don't think the pace will be overwhelming. There's no speedsters like Hansen in here, but I think it's going to be tactical between Painter and Gemologist. I do think Painter is training fabulous right now. I give him the leg up.
All right, guys, time to tackle the topics. I want to talk about a horse, Frankel. A lot of people say he's the best horse in the world.
Right.
If he wins on Wednesday, is there any shot that they bring him over for the Breeders' Cup? Ed, you first.
Yes, I do think that Juddmont will consider the Breeders' Cup not a turf race.
Wow.
I think they might take a classic shot with him. I know they've said no, or they've said it's not a possibility, but I just think when the chips end up being down and he's undefeated in Europe as a 2, 3, and 4-year-old, a chance to win the Breeders' Cup Classic would make him the best horse of all time internationally, of all time, ever. So
I
that's
agree
tough
that's,
to pass up.
That's great lure and everything, but they've already said absolutely not. They're not going to do it. Why would you want to stretch a horse out around 2 turns, going 10 furlongs, perhaps for the first time on the dirt against real American horses? I think he's set up to be embarrassed more so than he is.
I see it as a nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what happens, and especially with the Euro-American dynamic, you know, they'll say, oh, well, he was on Lasix and he had to ship, and I mean, he could finish last and no one would care. I think they'd applaud the sportsmanship of it. And if it were me and I had the budget, I would say, hey, if you come over, we're donating $10 million to the Bobby Frankel division of Old Friends if, you know, you show up. So there's a lot of ways to spin it. Bethany Frankel, I think, would get on board. I think it'd be huge for the sport. It's optimism on my part, but I'd love to see him here. And I do think there is a chance.
It's a lot of optimism. Yeah, you know, look, I think he's the greatest horse in the world. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But the bottom line is Juddmont, very conservative operation. This is typically not the move they make. If they said that they're not coming, I just really can't see a way to
come over here with some really good ones. I mean, no one in Frankel's
twice over in the Pilot League.
Well, one thing's for sure, it would be great for horse racing if he does come over, and hey, maybe just sparks the conversation. We can get something going.
We both agree, no mile though. He won't come for the mile.
I agree. No, if he comes, it's to prove something he hasn't done before.
I agree with that.
All right, thank you guys. Great insight. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap all these key races.